Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, wait, let me do that. Okay, we're just gonna go in.
We are?
How are you, buddy?
What? I don't know. Today's a mess. My speakers aren't working. We don't have our intro. I don't know what's going on, but I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here. How are you?
Good. No, we're gonna do the intro after this. I just wanted you to breathe and say, "Let's kick off the show," and then I'll just run the intro afterwards, just because I
No,
think it's funny.
no, you saw me backstage. My head's ready to explode at technical difficulties, but let's kick that intro and then you and I will talk for one more second. How about that?
Are you sure? Okay, let's do it, my
So,
friend.
hello, hello, hello. Listen, nothing makes me happier than hearing that intro. So I wish we would have started the show that way because I could have kicked it off the way I really wanted to. And Sia, I get excited when Pearl Jam things happen, and they started their tour on Saturday. I got my Dark Matter hat on and my EV shirt. And obviously, Hail Hail Auctions is attributed to my favorite song of theirs. And what we do here on the appeal wouldn't be possible if not for you. So as always, I just wanted to say thanks.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Hey, look, peoples, technology will always happen, but you know what? It's it's not life changing, people. Like seriously. So I'm glad you're in a better mood after listening to the intro.
Of course, yeah, I'm always in a good mood. What is there not to be happy about? We're alive and kicking. The sun is shining, and the appeal wouldn't be possible without you and Brilliant Bean Media. And Hail Hail Auctions would not be possible without our guest today, and without his mentorship and his guidance, and just his support and his encouragement over the last year or so. As I've gotten to know him, this idea wouldn't come to fruition, and I wouldn't be a licensed auctioneer and doing all the things I'm doing now. So I'm excited for you to get to meet and our guest to get to meet Mr. Chris Hensley. So Sia, why don't you take a back seat, bring Chris up, and we'll bring you back on stage as we say goodbye.
Awesome.
Hey,
There
hey, hey,
is
what's
my
going on?
What's happening, man? I don't know if you heard Sia's and my conversation before we brought you on, but I just can't say enough about you and the person you are and the friendship we've developed and the mentorship you've provided to me over the last year. As fate would have it, right? I've been running a charity event for quite some time and using another great auctioneer who we're going to have as a guest on a future show. But we had a committee last year, and they wanted to interview a few auctioneers, and the committee chose you. And little did I know, a year later, you'd be one of my better friends in life and one of my greatest support systems. So before I keep going and gushing about you and tearing up, Chris, why don't you introduce yourself and let folks know a little bit about you?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So my name's Chris Hensley. I'm an auctioneer. Love doing what I do. It's my passion. I tell people all the time, this is the thing that I'm best at in life. So when you see me on stage, that's as good as you're ever going to see me. Apologize in these next 30 minutes here on screen. Probably not going to be my best, but you're going to see my passion for auctioneering come through for sure. And yeah, Chris, it's been so great getting to know you. I think you and Sia and I all have music in common. Different flavors probably. I know you are nuts about Pearl Jam. I'm nuts about my own things, but
I was actually going to ask you about that later on, so don't
yeah,
don't give don't let the
we'll
cat out
get
of
to
the bag.
music. We'll
Yeah.
get to music for sure. Yeah. So happy to be on the appeal. Hope to come back again in the future and like talk shop. Let's go.
Yeah. No, listen, and as we've gotten to know each other, auctioneering is your passion, but it's not also your only career, right? You have a passion for raising funds for great causes 24/7, whether it's on a stage for other great charities, and you personally and professionally raise, endless amounts of money for great work with Northwestern. So why don't you talk a little bit about that too? Because that's just
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
admirable as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I co-lead the Northwestern Memorial Foundation here in the Chicago area. Raising money to make what is an exceptional healthcare system even better. Yeah, we raise, the last 3 years, we've raised about $140 million a year. We're on a path right now to hopefully achieve about $250 million a year. That's great. I love doing that because, healthcare, I think it should be a human right. I think everybody should have access to healthcare. I know, through your Walking Tall movement, mental health care is an important issue. I wish we as a society would look at mental health care like we look at physical health care. We don't yet, but we'll get there.
Yep.
And so, the work that I do during the day is critical. It feeds my soul. And it's just this great dichotomy to have that long-term kind of slow burn fundraising during the day, and then this immediate gratification fundraising on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights at leading auctions.
Yeah, you said it best. The immediate gratification, right, of the auctioneering business is so fun. And so, before I give my take on it, how did you then, taking your passion for raising funds at Northwestern and doing great events and creating great relationships, turn that into, we call it a side hustle, but like I call it two careers, man, because like you're always working events and you're always raising money for auction, for great organizations. So how did you become an auctioneer?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I built a gala. Before Northwestern, I worked for the American Cancer Society, and I built a gala called the Black and White Ball. And when I say I mean, me and a team of people, but it was kind of my baby. So this was in the depths of the Great Recession in 2009. In fact, if I remember right, our event was on March 6th of 2009. And if I remember the track of the S&P 500, it hit its bottom on March 9th of 2009, right? So we're launching a gala literally in the ashes of the Great Recession, right? In March of 2009. And, it wasn't a terrible event. We hired an auctioneer. We didn't have a chair. The chair dropped out a month before, 2 months before, kind of thing. And it was like by the seat of our pants, we raised $120,000, right? But that was, good enough. And we secured a good chair for the second year. And then we secured this fantastic auctioneer who, if I'm your mentor, Greg Dellinger, the G-Man, is my mentor, right? So Greg came and served as our auctioneer in that second year. And we went from like 120 in that first year to 360 in the second year. We went to 500 in the third year. I sat in the audience, and I've done this, I've worked in nonprofits for years. So I sat in the audience watching auctioneers. Some were great, some were terrible. Greg was that great one, right? And so, watching him was so much fun that I reached out to him and I said, hey, can we grab lunch, right? And so we grabbed lunch, and I said, I'd love to do what you do. And he with, as if you know Greg, he's just the most encouraging, supportive, positive force out there. And he said, Chris, you should absolutely do it. There are more events than there are auctioneers, right? And so there'll be plenty of work for you, right? And so what did I do? I thoroughly ignored him for 5 years, right? But then fast forward to 2016, I was at an event and the auctioneer was bombing, right? My girlfriend leaned over to me and she said, this auctioneer is terrible. And she didn't know anything about auctioneering, right? And so I knew if people who hadn't seen a lot of auctioneers in practice knew what a good one and what a bad one looked like, that this was a bad one. And so I called the executive director of the organization the next week and I said, hey, you left a lot of money in the room. I think I can raise more money for you when you do this again. And to prove it to me and to prove it to you, I'll do it for free. And so I did that first one for free in the fall of 2017, like 7 years ago, and still have it on my iPhone. It was the most natural thing I have ever done. What you see on stage today is roughly what came out of me in that very moment, right? And so I just found this passion. Give me a microphone, give me an audience of 300 or 400 or 500 people, and let me squeeze as much money out of them as possible for a great cause. And let me help them feel great about it also, right? Let me help them feel great about giving to a great cause, because when they feel great about it, they're going to give more money to it, right? I'll stop. I'll let you get a word.
No, here's what I was going to say. Yeah, truly, like, if somebody were to ask me, like, Chris, how did you become an auctioneer? Like, I would say listen to Chris Hensley because that's like exactly my story, right? Like
Yeah,
I created
yeah,
my own event in my past employer, raising money for a scholarship fund, a sports themed event, and had keynote speakers. And lo and behold, as I said earlier, as fate would have it, we chose you. And Chris Chelios, who's a friend of mine, was our keynote. And the
yeah.
three of us were behind stage. And I'll never forget it, Chris. The three Chris's, believe it or not, were standing there. And Chelly goes, "Man, you're really good on the mic." And you looked me dead in the eye and you're like, "Yeah, you are." And I was like, "You know what? I hear that every year. So every time I
Yeah.
do my event, I do the same thing. Like, Chris, why don't you do that more?" And I was like, forget about it. I would ignore people, right? And now here I am. So it's just so cool to hear how the stories of professions and passions come to be. And in your own company now, Bid Raise Bid, talk about some of the clientele you work with and some of the
Uh,
amazing auctions you've been a part of. I know there's some things that have to stick out.
Yeah, yeah. So I fall in love with every one of the clients that I have, right? Probably 3, 4 times a year, I end up giving like part of my fee back to the client because I'm just in the moment motivated. As the audience is motivated, I get just as motivated, right? And
Hell yeah.
so yeah, so I've been working with clients big and small for 7 years now. Probably 3 years ago, we're coming right out of COVID. I think I did about 25 events. 2 years ago, I did about 30 events. Last year, I did 50. And this year, I just booked my 60th event for the year. So I'm doing this pretty much, every Friday and Saturday night, some Wednesdays and Thursdays as well, an occasional Tuesday and Sunday, that kind of thing. Mondays are the rare days for auctions, but they do happen. I've done one. And so, yeah, everything from like Special Olympics Illinois that I absolutely love, Amanda and the team over there, to Mercy Home. I did them for the first time last year, doing them again this year. Catholic Charities do their St. Nick Ball with 1,000 people. The first year we went from 350,000 to 1.3 million in fundraising. Last year we beat that with the Ricketts family as chairs. And so it just is like this most special and fulfilling job I have ever had. And I use the word job because I don't know what else to call it, but it has never once, Chris, felt like work. Never once felt like work.
Yeah, no, I got done with an event a couple weeks ago, and as you and I do, we text back and forth, comparing notes and asking each other how the evening went. And, I made a comment, and it really has stuck with me. One of my past passions, and it still is, and one of my past careers, as you know, was baseball. I was fortunate to play collegiately and coach for a long time. And, I liken getting on stage and knowing I raised a bunch of money for a great cause to throwing a 7 inning gem, beating Illinois to go to the Big Ten tournament. Like that
Yeah,
rush of adrenaline, that competitiveness, but in a different light, knowing that you're doing
totally.
it for
Yeah,
for good is like
yeah,
so rushing, right? And of course, as you said, I have my own passions for mental health for various reasons with the Walking Tall movement. But knowing that I could use my skill set as you do and my personality and my energy to better others' cause is just so cool. Because let's face it, not everybody is outgoing as you or I. And so, like, to grab that mic
yeah,
and get on stage and make a fool of yourself and ask somebody for $100,000, like, not everybody's got those cojones,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
how,
yeah, yeah.
how'd that happen?
Yeah, it just, my granddad was a Methodist minister, so that probably had a lot to do with it. I think I got that DNA strand. Some of my buddies may be watching out there today. We used to play in punk rock and post-punk bands in the 80s. I had a black mohawk and all that kind of stuff. So I crave the stage, right? I love to be on stage. I love to, meet people. I like what I say is I get to go to 60 parties a year. And for a portion of that party, I get to be the center of attention. And when I'm the center of attention, I get to help that organization advance their mission, right? And so whether that mission is mental health or it's a school or it's a disease that we're trying to battle against, the more that I can bring, the more money we have the opportunity to raise, right? And
Yeah,
so
you're right. Like,
yeah,
real quick, I'll say you said it perfectly, right? Like, our passions for music, right? Like you feel like almost you're on stage as a rock star. Not that
Totally.
you have the ego of such, but you could command the room, and you're using that command for such good, right? And you do it
Yeah.
so perfectly. So I wanted to sorry to cut you off, but keep going. But I had to just drop that in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so you'll feel this also, and you probably have already. Like you'll know the nights where you nailed it, and you'll know the nights where like you just weren't quite on, right? But God, I had this night just this past Saturday night, right? I was doing, as you know, I was doing Writers Theater in Glencoe, this incredible arts organization in Glencoe that not only brings the arts, to their audiences at their theater, but also takes the arts and arts education out to schools and out to kids who might not otherwise have art in their life, right? And kind of see that as maybe a possibility in their life. And so I got on stage after this incredible band was performing all of these, great 70s hits, and I had to follow that, and it was like, wow, this is like top-notch production. And then I get up there, and it was the performance of my life, brother. I mean, literally, I just got a phone call. This never happens. I just got a phone call from somebody who was at the event, and they said, is this Chris Hensley? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, we were at the event on Saturday night for Writers Theater, and I just had to call you and tell you were incredible, right? Now, this frequently happens in the audience, right? And you've seen this, right? You get off stage and people just want to come up and say, thank you. You did great. You were the best auctioneer I've ever seen, whatever. I call it crowd bathing. I borrow that actually from Simon Le Bon from Duran Duran. He stands there on the stage at the front of the show, and the audience is just screaming at him, right? And he's just doing this, just crowd bathing, right? And that's my version of crowd bathing, is going out to the audience and talking to people, right? I think about it this way. I'm always on stage. I'm auditioning for at least 2 other jobs. That event again next year, the event that I'm doing right there next year. And then all of the people in the audience, we're talking to people who are, we're raising money from people who are on boards, who lead organizations, all of that kind of thing. And so when they see you kicking ass for this charity, they want you to come and kick ass for their charity also, right?
No kidding.
And so, you and I are both, we're just handing out cards constantly. We're getting phone calls, we're getting emails. I saw you at this event. I saw you at that event. You were the best auctioneer I ever saw. Like, could you come and do our event? The biggest problem that I have is that I can't be in 2 places at one time, right?
And that's where I come in. That's where I come in. And
absolutely.
And that's like you said, from your mentor with the G-Man telling you that there's more events than auctioneers, right? Like I'm proof of that. And I've developed some great relationships with some awesome organizations myself. Second City Canine Rescue, we just did a $266,000 for, and I'm being flown all over the place right now for Fabretto due to you. And that's just the kind of guy you are, because likely I'm going to do a great job. And they'll be my clients year in and year out, but you're going to do a great job for your clients, and you can't be in 2 places at once. So why wouldn't folks like you and I team up and help each other, and in turn help great causes? And, I want to just kind of change the subject real quick, because we have some amazing folks chiming in and some great business owners. I want to ask you, there's some folks asking questions as well, but I want to ask you a question and talk a little bit about, in your experience, doing 60 events a year now, the brand recognition that businesses can create by donating to auctions or sponsoring events, right? I think it's such a missed opportunity for local business owners or for entrepreneurs to donate their services to local charities. Not only do they get the write-off, but they gain exposure into a network for their services that they've never had exposure to. So talk a little bit about how that works for businesses, because that's been one of my passions, becoming an auctioneer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's this great opportunity for us auctioneers and nonprofit organizations to kind of create synergy in communities, right? You talk about Windy City Canine Auctions, or Canine Rescue. Like when companies sponsor that event, and their guests are sitting there seeing that, this car dealership or, this, spa, is this local business that's supporting this local nonprofit. These people are loyal to Windy City, and now they're going to be loyal to that sponsor because the sponsor is supporting this organization that they care so passionately about, right? So you want to, as a business, you want to connect your brand to passionate people who are willing to, go to the ends of the earth to support you. And when you can support the things that those customers are passionate about, they're going to become passionate about your product and your service and your business. So I think it's one of the most effective ways to get your business out there. And it's very low cost also.
Yeah, and in many cases, if you donate a service, as an example, if you're a coach of some sort and you're an entrepreneur, or you're a masseuse of some sort and an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, you donate your services, that's a write-off for your business. You gain access to a new client, and if you're an expert and you do a great job in your industry, you're going to have a client for life, like you would as an auctioneer or I do now. So, that's part of the services that I know I provide. And to talk a little bit about some of the other things that you provide with bid raise bid,
Yep.
aside from just being a general auctioneer.
Yeah. So, event consulting, because I've attended so many events, I've built a gala myself. I've walked in the shoes of the people who are planning their event. And so I know exactly what they're going through, right? I always like to say also, like when it comes to the day of the event, I am there to help you, right? I'm not there to be a diva. You're not there to care for me. I don't need a green room. I don't need a makeup artist, none of this kind of stuff, right?
I do.
I'm
I
there.
do. I do.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, clearly I need a makeup artist, but
Yeah, well, face for radio, both of
if
us.
I'm going to wear
Face for
makeup, I'll do
radio.
it myself, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I'm there to help maximize your event so that you can raise as much money as possible, so that you can steward your donors as much as possible. And that stewardship begins immediately when they raise their paddle, right? And so, I'm in the audience mixing it up. I'm giving high fives. I'm giving fist bumps. I'm complimenting people on their shoes, their hair, their dress, their makeup, whatever, right? To make them feel great for being there tonight. Because look, they could have just as easily stayed home and watched reruns of Malcolm in the Middle, right? But they chose to be here instead, right? They're here helping this organization raise money. And so, help them feel great about it. When you help them feel great, they're going to give more money. They're going to raise their paddles more. And they're going to come back next year. They're going to create this viral buzz about your event that's going to make more people want to come to it. And so, are we the most important part of the event? No, but are we a critical element of it that helps people feel great? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking, here's another great question that was asked, and you and I always laugh behind the scenes about this as well. You mentioned being a critical part of an event, and I absolutely agree with you. But how often, and I've already experienced this myself in many conversations, do you hear from organizations, charities, well, we had a volunteer auctioneer, or, we're just going to have somebody's dad do it. And as you said in your own organization, right, when you were running your black tie gala, I think, as you said, the amplification of the giving with a professional like myself and yourself is instrumental, and the small cost that we do input on an organization is well spent. And so talk a little bit about that experience and that philosophy as well.
Yeah, well, for starters, like that small cost, I try to keep it as low as possible, right? I
Of
try to
course.
respect what my talent is, and yet while leaving the nonprofit with the ability to put as much of those dollars to work as possible. And so you'll find that I'm at the low end of the charity auctioneer price range. And I do that not because I don't think that I don't bring more value than anybody else, right? I've sat in the audience and watched the most expensive auctioneer in Chicago do his thing. And I can guarantee you that I do as well, if not better, than that most expensive auctioneer, taking nothing away from him, right? He's a great auctioneer, but I don't think there's a reason to charge triple what I charge, right? I think that these nonprofits, many cases, smaller nonprofits, that when they raise $250,000 million, that's life-changing for their mission, right? They're able to do different things that they're not able to do without that money, right? And so, so that's one piece of it. The other piece that I'll say is, I think that what you and I bring to an event more than pays for itself, right? I'm confident of that. In fact, so if I charge, $4,000 or $5,000 for an event, I'm going to bring you 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, more than you would have. I'll give an example. I took an event over a couple years ago from a different auctioneer. And that year before, they raised 175,000 in the moment, right? Just paddle raise and live auction. I took the event over, roughly the exact same architecture for the event, and we did $250,000. So that's $75,000 difference, right? And I was $3,000 cheaper than that other auctioneer. And again, taking nothing away from that auctioneer, there are a lot of great auctioneers out there, right? There are probably 7, 8, 9 really good charity auctioneers in the Chicago market, right? And you're not going to go wrong with any of them, right? But you're going to get people like you and me who believe passionately in the mission of the organizations that we work for, who don't overcharge, and who bring these other ideas and their energy and all of that, that helps the organization raise more money than they would have otherwise. And certainly, to your point, more money than they would have raised with a volunteer auctioneer. So, if your goal is to raise $100,000 and you want to use a volunteer auctioneer, you might do $100,000. But if you brought one of us in, you'd probably do 140, right? And you're going to pay us $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, right? But it's worth it because you got, $40,000 more than what you would have gotten with that volunteer auctioneer. It definitely makes a difference. Here's why it makes a difference. That volunteer does it one time, right? You and I've done hundreds of auctions, right? I've worked with hundreds of organizations over the 7 years that I've done this. I've built auctions, I've built galas myself, so I know exactly what you're going through, when you're going through, what you need to be thinking about, right? And so I've become that partner, that advisor, that consultant also, that helps you see around corners and make sure that your event is going to be even more successful.
Yeah, no, you said it best. In that instance, I experienced it already, having done a paddle raise a couple weeks ago and having had the opportunity to have 3 people in the audience raise their paddle for $7,500. And at the end of the night, the organization said, we never had anybody above 5, right? And all of a sudden here we go, and we expedited the gifting that night. And it's just such a fun opportunity. And real quick though, hold on. Yeah, real quick one, because we're going to wrap up in 10 minutes and we can keep going. But there's 2 other main points I want to get to, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I always, when folks say like, we want to start our paddle raise at $5,000, I say, let me try at 10,000, right? And let me own it also, right? So, I could say, yeah, well, when we were talking about setting up this event, Chris and I said, Chris told me we should start at $5,000, but I said, let me try at 10,000, right? And so is there anybody out there, that superhero, that champion, that can be that first gift, that can put that paddle in the air, that can lead us off strongly here tonight, right? And inevitably, probably 40 to 50% of the time, somebody raises their paddle at that big number, right? And that supercharges the entire evening, right?
Yep.
Everybody then thinks about elevating their game. If you were going to give 100, you give 250. If you're going to give 250, you give 500, right? And so on and so forth. And so there's 2 events I want to talk about. One was North Shore Country Day. And I'll talk about the organizations that I support, because I dare any auctioneer to go try to get these events from me, right? I do such a good job that I'm certain that no other auctioneer.
That's good. Okay, time out.
Yeah.
That's to my point, right? And so, speaking of my competitiveness, right? Like, you and I, in essence, are a competitor, but we're not. We understand the industry, and we have to bring different things to the table. And, we don't want to go on too much longer, so I'll let you talk about one of those events. But I also want to just get your feedback on, how the industry is changing, right? Here's what I'm doing with the appeal. I don't know that any other auctioneer in the Chicagoland area is doing this.
Nobody.
I have a great production team behind me with Brilliant Beam and Sia, who you met, creating shorts for these organizations that I want to amplify the giving to. Nobody's doing that in the Chicagoland area, right? And
Yep.
so we
Yeah.
have to find ways to be more creative. And I want to get
Chris, in
your
a
opinion
lot of
on
ways,
that.
you're helping me and other auctioneers elevate our game as well, right? So thank you for doing what you're doing. You're bringing this new energy into the charity auction space in Chicago, and eventually, I think we're going to do that around the country, right?
Together.
So that competitiveness, I love it. I'm mostly competitive with myself, but I
Of
also want to
course.
know what an event did before I came along because I want to beat it. I want to give an organization absolutely no reason to need a new auctioneer, to go find a different auctioneer, right? The only reason they should move off of me is if my date is already booked for next year. And I'm booking into May of 2025 already. So, so that's kind of where we are. But back on those events. So 2 events I just want to talk real quick about. One was they said start at 10,000 on the paddle raise. And literally 30 minutes before I went on stage, I convinced them to let me try at 20. We had three gifts at $20,000. That's $30,000 that they would not have raised because those 20s would have all been $10,000 if I'd started at that level. And the other level, the other event was, they said start at 10. I said, let me try. I have a feeling on this one. Let me try at 25. I had a guy stand up and he looked like money, looked like Gordon Gekko, right? The suit, silver hair, everything. And he asked for my microphone. And I've learned never to give your microphone away, right? But I trusted the moment because he was sitting next to the board chair. He took the microphone and he came up to the stage and he said, I haven't talked to my wife about this, but I know where her heart is. We're going to give $500,000 to this organization, right? $500,000. It was absolute gold. The audience stood up. There were tears, everything. He handed the microphone back to me. I looked out to the audience and I said, folks, there were 300 people. I said, folks, don't think for a second that $500,000 gift lets you all off the hook. If anything,
Exactly.
it supercharges what we are here to do tonight. And we ended up raising $850,000 that night, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I want to talk about real quick.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I had an opposite experience, right? So behind the scenes, the organization, well, maybe 5,000. And I said, listen, I'm not afraid to fail. I've failed many times on a baseball field and I'll fail many times at an auction. I said to the executive director, what's the most donation, the largest donation you've ever received in a paddle raise in your history as an executive director? They said 10,000. And I said, well, I'm going to set the record for you tonight.
Yep.
So we raised it. We go to the paddle raise and I said, who's going to give me $10,001? And damn, not a paddle was raised, right? And so I moved on, and I ended up getting what we got that night. But it's okay to fail when you're on stage, as we are, because if we don't ask, we're never going to get to your point.
That's
right?
Exactly the point. That's exactly the point, Chris. Yes, you know the answer if you don't ask, right?
Yeah, that's it. And it looks a lot better for a guy like you or I to get turned down than the executive director or the volunteer dad who's going to start sweating through his shirt, like, because he's nervous and he's going to fail. So it's just been such an honor, and we have great people in the crowd, just checking in. Raquel Flores from Houston and Patty McNabb from New York. And we had Soaring Profits from Canada, great friends that I'm excited for you to meet, Chris, because they do great work in their communities. And I know you and I together, while we are, working as hard as we can individually in the Chicagoland area, we have aspirations to do things together nationally. And we're going to achieve that, and so to meet these people is going to be an honor for you. And I just want you to take the floor real quick, let people know where they could find you, contact you to book events. I know hey, it's good for me. You're booking in the May of 25. I'll ride your coattails, right? And We'll do
and
this
same,
together.
it's going to work both ways eventually. You're going to be super booked also, and you'll throw things my way too. So
of course.
and so my website, there's I put a sizzle reel together last year with a good buddy of mine, Ben Boyd. And you could see that video on my website. It's bidraisebid.com. You could find me. I'm probably most active on socials on LinkedIn, just Chris Hensley. I'll give out my phone number as well. 630-750-1045. Text is always best. However you want to contact me. And wherever your organization or your event is, I know this is true for both Chris's on this call here, that we will go anywhere, we'll get licensed anywhere, so that we can do auctions and help nonprofits raise a ton of money.
That's it. Exactly right. So, Sia, if you don't mind, I want to bring your self back up. I want the three of us for just a few seconds to talk about our true passions in music, because
Yeah.
you know, like we said earlier, part of being an auctioneer, and I've named my company Hail Hail Auctions after the greatest band ever to be known to man, Pearl Jam, and my favorite song. And Stia's, loves music, and Chris, you do. So, Chris, why don't you, start us off? You follow a band like I do, and talk a little bit
Yeah.
about your passion.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got a couple bands. I grew up in the '80s. I'm 54 years old. I was born in '70. So, 83, 84, 85. God, like Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, Psychedelic Furs, The Smiths. Just some of the greatest music I think ever created came out of that like mid '80s time span. I've got this cast of friends. My brother John, my buddy Michael, my buddy Bradley, Patrick, Chad. We all, played instruments, played in bands together, grew up together. And so music is like the fabric of my life, man. Like, I mean, you hear a song and it puts you back in that time, puts you back with those people. It just, special thing that music does to your soul. So, yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Sia? I know Chris is a,
Listen, you
Pearl
two,
Jam all around.
I knew you guys were going to hit it off. I knew you were going to hit it off, Sia.
Oh yeah, no, totally. Like we are similarly aged. I'm not quite 50 yet, but I will be in August. And we are funny you should mention it. We're gonna see Echo on May 8th. So
Nice.
Echo
Yeah.
and the Bunnymen.
Yeah.
So I too
Yeah.
have a concert crew that we all go, and it is
Yeah.
so much fun. The thing about, and I just, it's about experiences, right? What you guys offer as auctioneers is not just simply I'm going to shill for more money. It's people like to feel that excitement that they're actually contributing to something, right? And
Yeah.
getting those endorphins pumped up and getting that adrenaline going for them. uh, it is something that is, someone who is experienced and trained like you guys are can get to it faster, to make people feel good, and to remember the experience. And I think all three of us collectively with rock and roll background, it becomes a show. This whole fundraising event
100%.
becomes an opportunity to communicate. And
Yeah.
like any concert, we all like to woohoo, right? So you guys are rock stars. I'm like, I'm loving it. So that's my 2 cents
Yeah.
of this conversation.
Yeah.
Well,
Chris, you
I
got two
love your two
chances to
cents.
see Pearl Jam this summer, also, right
Well,
here in Chicago at Wrigley Field.
oh, well, dude, listen, speaking of, I want to just give a quick shout out. So, you guys both know my work with the Walking Tall movement and my passion for mental health. I actually am going to Seattle the last week of May to work with first responders, and shout out to Untamed Coffee Company and Mr. Brady Hubler and his wife Carrie and all the work they do in that community. But it just so happens I was able to organize the trip when Pearl Jam is playing two shows in Seattle. So I'll be able to go to those and work as well. And then, of course, my love for Pearl Jam is runs deep. 65 shows, and September is going to be a big month. I'm gonna Wrigley and Fenway and Ohana, and I've been lucky, in life to meet some great people and have mutual friends of some of the band members, and been backstage and just had conversations with my rock icons. I should show a photo. Not too many people have a picture with their hero in music, Eddie Vedder, and their father's hero in music, Pete Townsend. So I know my dad's
Uh,
watching, and I got a picture literally of me, Eddie Vedder, my dad, Pete Townsend, Billy Idol. It's crazy, right? And so music is ingrained in me. It's a part of who I've become. And Pearl Jam and their fan base is a charitable fan base. And that's ingrained in me, and that's why I started Hail Hail Auctions. And Chris, I just want to say thank you, because if not for the support and the guidance, encouragement you've given, man, like I wouldn't be in this position, given the last few years I've had.
yeah.
So I love you, man, and Sia, I
Love
love
you too,
you,
man. Yep. You
and
know why?
thank
You know
you.
why I said yes? You asked. You asked.
Yeah,
You said,
yeah,
I'd like to do that, and that's what Greg Dellinger did for me. So I'm just repaying the favor, paying it forward.
yeah, and I'll be honored to pay it forward to somebody else, because I really think this is a great industry for folks like us who are outgoing and giving back in nature. And Sia, you are one of those folks too, and I'm just honored to have you on my team. So, with that being said, check us out, hailhailauctions.com. You can follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. I should give a huge shout out to Jen Kaufman, another one of our team members who does amazing work on our reels and social media. So please connect with her. And then some of my great friends, Raquel Flores, who I mentioned, and her Influencers Connection Corner, Tausi Brands and Janice Shokerin, Jody Lamb and Structure Your Settlement, the list goes on and on. Mark Reed in Japan. We just have such great support worldwide, Chris, and I know you will now too. So it's been a great conversation, and let's get back to our Monday. So see if you don't mind, roll that outro.
See you guys.